The Sega Genesis, also known as the Mega Drive here in the UK, left an indelible mark on gaming history. This 16-bit powerhouse not only challenged Nintendo's dominance, but also ushered in an era of fierce competition and innovation. So for a bit of fun today, we're going to dive deep into the top 10 best-selling Sega Genesis games of all time, ranked by sales figures. And these titles not only moved millions of units, but also shaped the gaming landscape for years to come. So let's get started, shall we? Let's start by looking at number 10.
Rise from your grave.
And kicking off our list at number 10 is Altered Beast, a side-scrolling beat-em-up that transported players to the mythical ancient Greece. Developed by Sega's A1 division and originally released in arcades in 1988, the game made its way to the Genesis as a launch title in 1989. As a resurrected warrior, players fought through hordes of undead and monsters, transforming into powerful beasts along the way. I have to say, I like the game's iconic opening line, "Rise from your grave," and it became a cultural touchstone for the Genesis owners. Now, while the home console version couldn't quite match the arcade's graphical fidelity due to hardware limitations, it still offered an experience that was largely faithful to the original. The Genesis version ran a resolution of 320 x 224 pixels, which was typical for the system, and utilised the console's 64 colour palette to create a vibrant, if slightly muted, rendition of the arcade original. Altered Beast showcased the Genesis' ability to bring arcade-quality games into the living room, a key selling point for Sega in its battle against Nintendo. The game's success paved the way for more ambitious ports and original titles on the system, setting a precedent for the Genesis as a home for arcade-style experiences. And the game went on to sell at least 1.4 million copies. Number 9, Street Fighter 2 Special Champion Edition. Capcom's Street Fighter 2 was already a phenomenon in arcades, but its arrival on home consoles truly cemented its legendary status. And the Special Champion Edition for Genesis, released in 1993, was particularly noteworthy as it included features not found in the SNES version at the time. This edition allowed players to use the 4 boss characters, Balrog, Vega, Sagat and M. Bison, in Versus mode, a first for home console versions. It also introduced new moves and rebalanced gameplay, making it the definite version of Street Fighter 2 for many fans. The Genesis version ran at 60 frames per second, matching the arcade smooth gameplay, though with some compromises in audio quality due to the system's FM sound chip. Technically, the Genesis version of Street Fighter 2 pushed the console to its limits. The game utilised advanced sprite scaling and rotation techniques to achieve fluid animations, something the Genesis wasn't inherently designed for. Developers at Capcom had to employ clever programming tricks to overcome the system's limitations, resulting in a port that was remarkably close to the arcade original. The success of Street Fighter 2 Special Champion Edition on the Genesis helped fuel the 1990s fighting game boom and solidified Capcom's position as a major player in the genre. It also demonstrated that the Genesis could hold its own against the SNES in terms of handling complex arcade-perfect ports. A great game, and it sold just under 1.7 million copies. Number 8. Mortal Kombat 2. Following the controversy and success of the original Mortal Kombat, its sequel had big shoes to fill. Mortal Kombat 2, released for the Genesis in 1994, not only met expectations but exceeded them in many ways. The game expanded the roster with new characters like Kitana, Mileena and Baraka, who would become series mainstays. It also ramped up the violence with more over-the-top fatalities and introduced new finishing moves like babalities and friendships. The Genesis version of Mortal Kombat 2 ran on a custom ACIC chip, which allowed for improved graphics and smoother animations compared to its predecessor. On the Genesis, Mortal Kombat 2 was particularly popular due to its uncensored content, contrasting with the toned-down SNES version. This version helped cement Sega's reputation as the edgier, more mature gaming option. The game pushed the Genesis hardware to its limits, featuring digitised sprites and real actors and complex backgrounds that stretched the console's colour palette to its maximum. From a technical standpoint, Mortal Kombat 2 on Genesis was a marvel of optimisation. The developers at Probe Entertainment managed to compress the arcade's extensive graphical data to fit within the Genesis limited memory, while maintaining most of the visual fidelity. This included clever use of colour cycling techniques to simulate more colours than the Genesis could typically display simultaneously. And Mortal Kombat, well, it went on to sell at least 1.78 million copies. Number 7. NBA Jam. NBA Jam took the sports genre by storm with its exaggerated arcade-style gameplay. Developed by Midway and ported to the Genesis by Iguana Entertainment, the game featured 2-on-2 basketball matches with larger-than-life dunks, players literally catching fire, and the ability to shove opponents without fouls. Such a fun and an addictive game, I have to say. The Genesis version of NBA Jam, released in 1994, was a faithful recreation of the arcade experience, complete with digitised sprites of real NBA players. The game ran at a smooth 60 frames per second, maintaining the fast-paced action of the arcade original. And to achieve this level of performance, the developers had to make some compromises, such as reducing the number of background elements and simplifying some animations. But I have to say, you don't really notice after a while. One of the most impressive technical aspects of NBA Jam on the Genesis was its use of voice samples. Despite the system's limited audio capabilities, the game managed to include clear, recognisable commentary from Tim Kitzrow, adding to the arcade-like atmosphere. And this was achieved through clever audio compression techniques and strategic use of the Genesis sound channels. They've done a good job here, they really did. NBA Jam's success spawned a series of sequels and imitators, influencing sport game design for years to come. Its popularity extended beyond gaming circles, with its catchphrases like "He's on fire" and "Boom shakalaka" entering the mainstream lexicon. And the game, well, it went on to sell at least 1.93 million copies. One of my personal favourites at number 6, Streets of Rage. In the realm of beat-em-up games, Streets of Rage stood out as one of the Genesis' finest offerings. Developed by Sega's AM7 division and released in 1991, the game was set in a crime-ridden city where players took control of ex-police officers fighting to take down a criminal syndicate. And what set Streets of Rage apart was its gritty urban atmosphere, enhanced by Yuzo Koshiro's incredible techno soundtrack. I mean, Koshiro's music certainly pushed the Genesis Yamaha sound chip to its limits, employing an advanced FM synthesis technique to create a score that rivaled CD quality audio of that time. The game's co-op mode also allowed friends to team up and take on waves of thugs together, making it a popular choice for social gaming. I certainly remember playing this game with my dad. It was absolutely fun. We ended up hitting each other, which was also part of the fun. Technically, Streets of Rage was a showcase of the Genesis capabilities. The game featured large, detailed character sprites, smooth animations and parallax scrolling backgrounds that created a sense of depth. The developers certainly made clever use of the Genesis limited colour palette as well, employing dithering techniques to simulate additional colours and create the game's moody nocturnal atmosphere. The success of Streets of Rage led to 2 sequels on the Genesis, with the series recently seeing a revival with Streets of Rage 4 in 2020. The original game's blend of tight gameplay, atmospheric graphics and revolutionary sound design set a new standard for beat-em-ups on home consoles. And if you're interested, well, I'll leave a link at the end because I did do a whole video on Streets of Rage with the complete history and all the different game versions released over all the various systems. So, if you're interested, check it out. I am a little bit surprised that Streets of Rage 2 is not here because I have to say that is the superior game out of the 2, and I wouldn't really get too involved in the 3rd game, unless it's a Japanese version because that game was a little bit weird. And Streets of Rage, well, it went on to sell 2.6 million copies. Okay, here we go. Number 5, Mortal Kombat. The original Mortal Kombat, released for the Genesis in 1993, was a cultural phenomenon that pushed the boundaries of violence in video games. Developed by Midway for arcades and ported to home consoles by Probe Entertainment, the game stood out on the Genesis for its uncensored content. And unlike the SNES version, which replaced blood with sweat and toned down fatalities, the Genesis release kept all the gore intact. This decision proved to be a major selling point, attracting players who wanted the full, unedited Mortal Kombat experience. The game's success on the Genesis played certainly a significant role in the formation of the Entertainment Software Rating Board, also known as the SRB, and it was forever changing how games are marketed and sold as they are today. And I certainly remember all the controversy of this game and another game called Night Trap, which I also bought for the Sega CD, and it was a pretty rubbish game, but because of the bad press, you go and buy it, and that's what everybody else done too. From a technical perspective, the Genesis version of Mortal Kombat was an impressive achievement. The developers certainly managed to recreate the arcade's digitized character sprites with a high degree of fidelity, despite the console's limited colour palette and memory constraints. And as I mentioned in Mortal Kombat 2, they achieved this by employing advanced compression techniques and made strategic use of the Genesis Direct Memory Access, the DMA capabilities, for faster data transfer. And the game also featured a secret blood code which allowed players to unlock the uncensored content. This not only added to the game's mystique, but also demonstrated the Genesis' ability to include hidden features and Easter eggs, something that became increasingly common in later games. And by goodness, this game went on to sell 3.25 million copies. Right, number 4, this includes 2 games, Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Sonic and Knuckles. Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and its expansion Sonic and Knuckles, released in 1994, represented the pinnacle of classic Sonic formula. The game introduced Knuckles and expanded the scope of Sonic's world and pushed the Genesis hardware to its absolute limits. The unique lock-on technology of Sonic and Knuckles allowed players to combine it with Sonic 3, creating one massive game. This innovative approach to expandability was ahead of its time, predating modern DLC and expansion packs. The lock-on feature was made possible by the cartridge's pass-through port, which allowed it to read data from a second game cartridge inserted on top. This also meant you could put in the first game, the first Sonic the Hedgehog game, and also Sonic 2, and it would create a completely new game with new characters. At the time, this was absolutely brilliant and completely original. I mean, technically, Sonic 3 and Knuckles was a marvel of Genesis programming. The game featured improved graphics with more detailed sprites and backgrounds, often pushing the system's 64 colour palette to its limits through clever use of colour cycling and dithering. The game also employed advanced parallax scrolling techniques to create a greater sense of depth and speed. And I didn't know this, but apparently the soundtrack was partially composed by Michael Jackson, although this is uncredited, and this made full use of the Genesis sound capabilities. Wow, Michael Jackson. The use of the Genesis chips created a rich, varied soundscape that is still celebrated today. With improved graphics, more varied levels, and new gameplay mechanics like the elemental shields, Sonic 3 and Knuckles is often regarded as the best of the classic Sonic games. Its technical achievements and innovative design solidified Sonic's place as Sega's mascot, and it demonstrated the Genesis capabilities as the 16-bit era neared its end. And the game, well, went on to sell 4 million copies. Get in there. Number 3 is Disney's Aladdin. Tell me, what do you prefer? Do you prefer the SNES version of Aladdin or the Genesis version of Aladdin? For me, it's definitely the Genesis. In an era when licensed games were often subpar crash grabs, Disney's Aladdin for the Genesis was a revelation. Developed by the very talented Dave Perry at Virgin Games, and it was released in 1993, it featured stunning animation that closely mimicked the look of the animated film. The gameplay was a mix of platforming and sword-based combat, with Aladdin able to throw apples at enemies or slash them with his sword. The game's levels closely followed the movie's plot, allowing players to relive favourite scenes. For me, what set Aladdin apart was its visuals. The game employed hand-drawn animations created by Disney animators, which were then digitised for use in the game. From a technical standpoint, Aladdin was absolutely groundbreaking. The game used a technique called digicel animation, which allowed for smoother, more detailed character movements than typically seen on 16-bit consoles. This process involved hand-drawing character animations, digitising them and then optimising them for the Genesis hardware. And the developers also made clever use of the colour palette, employing advanced dithering techniques, just like the other games we mentioned, to simulate a wider range of colours than the system could typically display. This allowed them to closely match the vibrant, colourful look of the Disney film. Such a great game. I absolutely loved this game when I bought it, although a little bit difficult to get into. Aladdin's success showed that licensed games could be high-quality experiences when given proper development resources and care. Aladdin certainly set a new standard for movie tie-in games, and it demonstrated the Genesis' ability to handle complex, cartoon-like animations. In this game, well, it also went on to sell 4 million copies. Here we are, number 2, and my favourite Sonic game, and that is Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Building on the success of the original, Sonic the Hedgehog 2, released in 1992, refined and expanded everything that made its predecessor great. It introduced Sonic's sidekick Tails, allowing for cooperative play, and debuted the spin dash move that became a series staple. The game's levels were more varied and complex, from the dizzying heights of Chemical Plant Zone to the neon-lit Casino Night Zone. And the addition of the two-player competitive races added replay value and fostered friendly competition. And Sonic the Hedgehog 2 also introduced Super Sonic, achieved by collecting all 7 Chaos Emeralds, giving players an incentive to fully explore each level. And I have to say, I really loved the 3D effect of those special stages. Absolutely brilliant. For me, Sonic 2 was a significant step up from its predecessor. The game featured larger levels and more complex layouts, pushing the boundaries of what was possible on the Genesis hardware at the time. The developers at Sonic Team employed advanced programming techniques to again maintain the game's signature speed while rendering more detailed environments and sprites. And as I mentioned, one of the most impressive technical achievements in Sonic 2 was the implementation of the two-player split screen mode. This feature required clever memory management and optimization to maintain a smooth frame rate while rendering 2 separate views of the game world simultaneously. It was very well done, very impressive. The game's audio, composed by Masato Nakamura, made full use of the Genesis Yamaha sound chip, resulting in a soundtrack that is still celebrated today. The iconic chemical plant zone theme in particular demonstrated the system's ability to produce complex, multi-layered musical compositions. Absolutely big fan of Sonic 2 when it came out, and I remember the hype over this game as well. It was massive, and I remember buying a gaming magazine that had a VHS tape that came with it, and it had footage of Sonic the Hedgehog 2, and when I played it, gosh, it was bright, it was fast, it looked like something at an arcade. It really did have me hooked, and just like 7.55 million people, I went out and bought the game right away. Okay, number 1, and it was my first Genesis game, and that is Sonic the Hedgehog. That's right, at the top of our list, with a staggering over 15 million copies sold, is the game that started it all, Sonic the Hedgehog. Released in 1991, Sonic was Sega's answer to Nintendo's Mario, offering fast-paced gameplay, vibrant graphics, and a cool, attitude-laden mascot. Now, while some of these sales can be attributed to the game being bundled with the Genesis console, its impact on the gaming landscape cannot be overstated. Sonic the Hedgehog was a technical showcase for the Genesis, demonstrating the system's ability to handle fast-scrolling backgrounds and complex level designs. The game's speed was its most notable feature, achieved through clever programming techniques. The development team, led by Yuji Naka, created a gaming engine that allowed for smooth, rapid scrolling, something that was challenging to achieve on the 16-bit hardware. And this blast processing as Sega marketed back then became a key selling point for the Genesis. From a visual standpoint, Sonic the Hedgehog pushed the Genesis to its limits. The game featured vibrant multi-layered backgrounds with parallel scrolling, with a brilliant sense of depth and speed. The character sprites, particularly Sonic himself, were large and detailed with smooth animations that brought the blue blur to life. And those catchy, unbeat tunes became instantly recognisable and helped define the sound of the Genesis era too. The success of Sonic not only launched a franchise but also positioned Sega as a serious competitor to that Nintendo, kicking off the 16-bit console wars in earnest. Sonic demonstrated that the Genesis could not only match but potentially exceed the capabilities of its competitors, setting the stage for Sega's most successful period in the console market. Such a great game, and I have to say, I played many hours playing this game. So, there you go, that was the top 10 selling games on the Sega Genesis. These top 10 best-selling Sega Genesis games represent more than just sales figures. They embody an era of innovation, creativity, and fierce competition in the gaming industry. From Sonic's speed to Mortal Kombat's controversy, these titles pushed boundaries and set new standards for what console games could be. Many of these franchises continue to thrive today with new entries, remakes and ports, keeping them relevant for modern audiences. The influence of the Genesis era can still be felt in game design, from the emphasis on multiplayer experiences to blend of accessibility and depth in gameplay mechanics. The technical achievements of these games laid the groundwork for future developments in the industry. The sprite scaling techniques used in Street Fighter 2 paved the way for 2D games. The digitised graphics of Mortal Kombat influenced the trend towards more realistic visuals in gaming, and Sonic's speed-based gameplay inspired a whole subgenre of platformers. And on top of that, the Genesis hardware limitations forced developers to be creative, resulting in innovations that are still appreciated today. The clever use of colour cycling, dithering and audio compression techniques demonstrated in games like Aladdin and Streets of Rage continue to inspire retro-style indie games. For me, as we look back at these classics, it's clear that the Sega Genesis was more than just a console. It was a cultural phenomenon that helped shape the gaming industry as we know it today. Whether you were Team Sonic or Team Mario, there is absolutely no denying that the impact these games had on an entire generation of players. Long live the Genesis, or Mega Drive as we like to call it in the UK. Okay folks, that was the top 10 selling games on the Sega Genesis. Thanks for watching my video, very much appreciated. Now remember, share your thoughts on these games. Which one do you think was the best game out of that top 10? Let me know, leave a message. And also please like my video, and even better, why don't you subscribe to my channel if you haven't done already. So until the next time, I'll see you all later, bye bye.